now.
It's
It's a
got like three
combination of
flavors of wine
three
in it.
wines: cashew, blackberry, sorrel, with sorrel gummies in it. Oh
Hmm.
my goodness.
There was a beer flavor a couple days back for those Wisconsin fans.
Well, hey, good day, fellow wanderers. This is Joseph, just with gathering with you and wanting to talk about the world all around us and have a good time talking with friends from the globe. And we have on today our first of two episodes we're going to do here with talking to some of my friends that are overseas, that are cross-cultural, live in a different country but grew up here in the States. And my first guest I have on is my friend Amy Gutierrez, who I've known the last 10 years. And I've gotten to get to know her and have visited her and her family in her place of where she's living right now in Belize, but she's from northern Wisconsin via LA, via Guatemala City, and now lives in Belize. Not the coastal part of Belize, but internal, inside of Belize, in the jungle, in San Ignacio, the twin cities of Belize. Not the twin cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, but the twin cities of San Ignacio. And what was the other city?
Santa Elena.
Santa Elena. For those of you that know, my French is no bueno, but my Spanish is muy bien. And so I have my friend Amy here, who's in Belize. What brought you to Belize, Amy, with your husband Harrison and family of three kids?
Well, we came to Belize as missionaries. We were serving in Guatemala, and we had been there. I had been there for 11 years, married. We had been there, I guess, seven. I said four before, but I guess it's seven. And we kind of came to the point where our ministry there was done. We were kind of finishing up things there, and it was time to figure out what was next, what the next step God had for us. And we went to visit a few places. We went to visit Bolivia and get to know some things about the ministry there. And we came here to Belize, and just after praying about it and visiting, we just really felt like this was where God was calling us, and this was the next step He had for our lives. So we moved down here.
That is crazy. And so you moved from a town of, well, how big was your town growing up? Like 7,000?
Yeah, Rhinelander, Wisconsin, when I grew up, I think was around seven. It was under 8,000 people.
Yeah, and then you moved to LA, which is huge, and we've talked about LA a lot on fellow wanderers, and so we're gonna blow over LA because I'm sick of hearing about everybody going to their fancy restaurants in LA and seeing the superstars. And then you went to Guatemala as a single person, and
Mhm.
that was a million people in Guatemala. What was it like being in Guatemala as a single person?
It was interesting. First, I went there when I was 19, a sophomore in college. I went to study abroad, and in that time, I just fell in love with it and knew it was going to be a part of my future. And then 7 years later is when I moved down there. I was 26. I moved down there full time, sold all of my stuff, and moved down there to live full time. And so and it was exciting because it was something I dreamed about for so long. So the first move down there, it was just riding on adrenaline. Like it was
Yeah.
this dream I had had for so long. It was so exciting. It's something I wanted for so long, and so the adrenaline just was so exciting for that first part of it. But then once I got there and life settled in, and you realize you're far from home, and the culture is so different, and the language in the beginning, even though I knew a lot of Spanish, the language to really feel comfortable was hard. And
Yeah.
so there were times where it was lonely and it was frustrating and it was a struggle at times.
For those of you that are listening on our podcast or watching our video on smalltownwanderer.com, I have to try to keep up with Amy and her quick speaking, and that's she's not northern Wisconsin in her speaking. You should hear her speak in Spanish. It's even faster. This is her
Sorry.
not trying to get more words out. It's just her natural voice of, we got some things to do. Let's get going. Let's get screwing around. Economy of words. Let's get them out. And so you were in Guatemala City, and then you met this really cute little boy. Maybe not little, but a cute young man in Guatemala City. And what happened there?
Well, I moved down there and then I started attending a church, a Foursquare church down there. And I started to meet people, different people my age and things, and get to know them. And one of them was Harrison. And we were just friends for a while. We're getting to know each other. And then it was maybe like we were friends in the beginning. Um, and then one night at church, I left my keys
That's
in.
what they told their parents.
Then one night, 3 years later, after we met, I left my keys in my car at church, and he came to the rescue and drove me home to get a spare set of keys, and that's where it all started.
Hot pickup tip for those of you that are listening: lock your keys in your car and see what boy will help you.
Yep,
Very
it worked.
nice. You got married. What was that like? And I don't want to be. I'm going to sound very racist here, but in our culture up here in northern Wisconsin, we don't have a lot of culture. And what
Mhm.
was that like? Just as you're mingling cultures, even with family and friends, like, going, what are you doing? Because that it was just again maybe a foreign thought a couple years ago for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I had already lived there for 4 years, so it wasn't like the culture was completely foreign to me. But kind of becoming a part of a new family, there was a lot of things I was learning. And in Guatemala, you live with your family pretty much until you get married. So even like in the U.S., if I were to start dating and marry a 27-year-old man and he was living at home, it might be like, oh, never mind. That kind of like cuts you out of the
Yeah.
out of the options. But in Guatemala, they everybody lives at home until they get married, and families are just kind of involved in a different way because families in the US are close, but it's just kind of a different dynamic. And so just learning how that all worked, and but I was pretty much, I knew quite a bit of the culture by then, so
Yeah.
it wasn't so hard.
So then now you've recently moved to Belize. Again, you actually don't live that far from Guatemala, the country, but quite a distance from Guatemala City to drive and to get there. You're in Belize, which is east of Guatemala, south of the Yukon Peninsula of Mexico, right on the water. It's a little sliver of a country, um, and you're about 2 hour drive from Belize City, which is the hub of internationalism of that country, of where everybody comes in, the port of entry. But you're in the jungle. Talk to us about what that's like in the twin cities of San Ignacio and
Santa Elena.
Santa Elena. Those twin cities, because those, well, how big are those cities?
The population, they say, I think if I'm correct, is around 20,000. It doesn't feel like it. There's not a lot of businesses and stuff to make it feel that big, but there's just a high population. I think it like that live kind of out in the surrounding areas too.
Um, and so you have a lot of there. It's very local culture, but also there's a lot of some tourism there that we don't think about because it's way away from the ocean. What kind of things as you've wandered around in that area? What have you found? What have you enjoyed to do just for fun?
Yeah, there's a lot of variety of activities to do there. This is kind of like the outdoors kind of adventure activity hub of tourism in Belize. We get a lot of visitors up here, cruise day trips from cruises that port here, come up here. There is a bunch of Mayan ruins, and so you can go and tour ancient Mayan ruins. There's rivers that run through here. There's kind of two that come together and then form the Belize rivers. So you can go kayaking or canoeing. Lots of people swim on the rivers. There's a huge cave system down here, so there's lots of really cool, like you can hike through caves, you can tube and canoe through caves. There's a lot of really cool, interesting outdoor activities to do around
When
here.
we were there, we all we went with you. I think it was your first time when we were
Yeah.
there a year ago to go canoeing in the caves. That was legit.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Really cool. To get there though was what you would think would be a jungle experience to just get there. I'm
Hmm.
glad we were in somebody else's vehicle because any of our vehicles would have probably lost an axle as we
Yeah.
were going through the jungle in these little towns. We were like, how do people even live out? I mean, we're in small town America, and I think sometimes how do people live here? And then there's that small town in Belize where I can't even remember the name of a couple of them, but just you're
Yeah.
just driving through, and you're like, how do people survive out here?
Yeah, yeah, you just drive up through the mountains in the jungle, and then all of a sudden, like 45 minutes later, you come across this little town, and yeah, it's interesting and different down here. It's surrounded by jungle. It doesn't feel like we live in the jungle, but there's people or resorts that are just a few miles out of town, and then even like 45 minutes driving out of town, you can find jaguars and pumas and all sorts of jungle animals. So it's a really interesting place to live. Yeah, we actually have some toucans that live in this area,
I'm
and there's
glad you could recognize my toucan
yeah, it totally sounded
impersonation.
like a toucan.
It was
So
perfect.
there's some days where we wake up and if we go sit out on the balcony, we can see like 20 toucans hopping between the trees. So not things you see growing up in northern Wisconsin.
No.
Hmm.
No, 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 no. So in Belize, the national language I know is English, and that's sometimes forgotten. We throw everything south of Texas. We probably think they speak Spanish, and forget that there's English and Portugal and other languages spoken there. So you came from a Spanish-speaking country into an English-speaking country with your
Mhm.
kids being kind of bilingual, and all of you are bilingual. How's that as a culture, and how do you bring your family together to celebrate those different cultures?
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting switch because we're only a few miles from the border. We're next to Guatemala. Even there was a time where Guatemala considered Belize part of Guatemala, but it's a completely different culture. The languages, English is the number one language in schools, in government, everywhere. English is the number one language, but maybe about 70% of the population speaks Spanish as well. But then there's also Creole, which is the local language. It's kind of a mix. I don't even know what it's a mix of, but like you can kind of hear some words in there and you can kind of just by listening figure out what they say, but also they could be speaking and you can just have no idea what they're saying. It kind of sounds like a little Jamaican maybe. But then there's
Jamaican, which
also,
is a little French and
yeah,
African and everything.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
mixed together.
And then there's also Garifuna, the language, which is an African culture on the coast. And there's actually even a huge
Ripana?
Mennonite population here. So you hear German. You can be walking down the street and hear German.
Oh
So
wow.
it's a huge mix of culture here. And even just within our family is a mix of cultures. So we try to, it just kind of happens naturally. The blend of our cultures of Harrison's Guatemala culture growing up and mine from the US and my kids who are just kind of a mix of everything by now and just kind of naturally letting it fall into place are the different things that are important to us and trying to teach our kids what maybe they're not naturally experiencing in here, but it's part of what we want them to know.
So talk a little bit more about that of just blending your family's cultures. What are some things that you do? I know you said they naturally kind of happen, but you have
Yeah.
to be fairly intentional with some things, maybe language or food or
Mhm.
different celebrations that you might have to honor your different cultures.
Yeah, I think each of us, me and Harrison, there's certain things growing up or not being in our own culture that we realized that my kids just wouldn't naturally experience. And so, I mean, some of them are silly little things like St. Nick's Day, which down here in Guatemala, they have no idea what that means. But I grew up it being something exciting that
What?
happened. And yeah, I guess even in other parts of the U.S., people don't even know what that is. But so it's something that I do for my kids because it's something I grew up getting excited about, and now they get excited about it. And then there's things like food.
Do you watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
We do. We put
Okay,
that on for them the other day.
good, good.
My kids, it's funny. I grew up in Wisconsin where there's deer everywhere and there's hunting and everything, and deer are just a natural part of life. My kids grew up they've seen a few in Wisconsin, but really the only experience they have with deer is Christmas and reindeer. And so every deer they see anywhere is a reindeer to them.
Perfect.
Perfect.
They all taste the same.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Harrison and I, just things that are important to us, we try to share them with our kids and teach them things when we realize it's not a part of life here. It's funny when I look at my kids and see different things that now they're making as their memories and they're making who they are as a culture. Like, for example, just food. Growing up, if my mom were to give me a plate with a big old slob of black beans in the middle of it and tell me that was breakfast, I probably would have looked at her like she was crazy or thrown up. But my kids grew up in Guatemala where black beans is a staple food. And so they're number one. They would eat it 7 days a week. Give them some tortillas, give them a big old glop of black beans, and they are as
Is it
happy.
mounded? Is it mounded, or is it like we get with
People,
our? Okay, because like when we get our black beans, at the supposedly Mexican restaurants up here, they're kind of like a thin layer. They're like just
oh
you
no,
know.
these are thicker. They're kind of like refried black beans, so they hold their shape. It kind of looks
Okay,
like a big old glop of mashed potatoes, but
what you would think of a bad high school, movie, with this.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's what it
okay.
looks like. And to me, growing up, like I never even saw probably a black bean, and so now my kids, it's probably their number one favorite food.
I I like it.
Yeah, I
Um,
love it now.
I when my wife and I and our son were down in San Ignacio a year or so ago, and to visit you guys, just a beautiful town. If people want to go see Belize and not see the Belize they see on the Travel Network, I would definitely recommend going that route because it's just easily navigatable, you know. And there's a river there in the middle of the two towns, and it's just a really cool small town vibe with some tourism stuff
Mhm.
without any national chains of anything. Um, it's just a really cool, like, find a parking spot and just start walking the streets and going into the shops. We went to a really great restaurant there. I remember I brought your kids to an ice cream shop. What was that one that place? It was super hot when we went in there. It was like 1,000 degrees inside and uh,
Everywhere.
everywhere. Okay, that narrows it down. It was like a man. I just remember I had that big fish, like a fish on the.
Oh yeah, I think it was Hannah's. The
Yes,
front of it was kind of all open. It's called
yes,
Coac. It's a, I think a Mayan word maybe. It means let's go eat, but they call it Hannah's.
Hannah's. That was it.
Yeah, they have
That
really good food.
that was good, and we went to that. We went to another restaurant that was a little higher end, but yet
Trade.
when Crave, yes, you never think higher end because again, it's on this like
Mm-hmm.
little side street, and you have to
Yeah.
jump over the gutter to get there.
Uh-huh.
That place was good with a little ice cream shop right next to it. Your ice cream place is doing some special things right now too with the quarantine. What are they doing with I'm seeing some of that online right now.
Yeah, it's called the Ice Cream Shop, and it's this little teeny tiny ice cream shop downtown. And it's always been one of our favorite places to go. Kind of a special treat for the kids when we need it. It's just called the Ice Cream Shop. But since
Not just the ice cream shop. The shop is spelled SHOPPE.
okay, yes,
It's all high end
yeah.
shop.
But with quarantine and with different products from the US not being available, they make all their ice cream locally in Belize City, but a lot of their ingredients are imported in. So now with quarantine, they decided to do a special where they want to support local businesses. So they've been making all these really creative and amazing flavors with local products. So a couple days ago, there was a vanilla with pineapple hot sauce from a local hot sauce company. The
No
other day I
flavor.
went, yeah, that one sounded good to me. I wanted to try that one. The other day I went and tried one. It was golden milk, so it was turmeric, coconut milk, black pepper, and a couple other things. That one was interesting. It was good, but it was something I'd never tasted before. And so they've been incorporating a lot of bananas are huge here, so they've been incorporating a lot of local products. But then they also donate $1 back to the local or to the food pantries with just the lack of resources right now while so many people are out of work.
They got one called Wine Down. I'm looking
Yeah,
at it right now.
it's
It's a
got like three
combination of
flavors of wine
sweet
in it.
wines, cashew, blackberry, sorrel, with sorrel gummies in it. Oh
Hmm.
my goodness.
There was a beer flavor a couple days back for those Wisconsin fans.
Again, it's a small city, and it's just a really cool vibe of a place. My wife and I talk about if we were ever to go anywhere and live, definitely your town of San Ignacio and the Twin Cities of
Santa Elena.
Santa Elena. I got to get that part if I'm going to live there, ain't I? Definitely not going to live in Santa Elena. That's where the uppity people live. Um, we just loved it there. We might just go down there and live and be. I'm looking at their ice cream stuffed jacks right now. You have a jacks. What is a jack?
Fried jacks is a very Belizean thing, and it's usually served with breakfast. It's just a piece of dough that they fry, and so it's kind of like a donut, except they don't eat it. They don't always eat it sweet. They'll just like with beans and eggs. They just kind of like you would eat a tortilla in other countries. You just eat it on the side as you're eating your breakfast. I've also seen people douse it in syrup, so sometimes they eat it sweet.
It's a pancake. It's a croissant. It's a
Yeah,
donut.
it's just some fry
It's
bread.
a
Yeah,
tortilla. It's an elephant ears. It's
whatever you
everything
need
in
it to
one.
be. Yeah.
It's everything you've ever dreamed about.
Yep.
It is.
So,
And
so right now at the ice cream shop, you can get one of those stuffed with all your favorite ice cream flavors.
it's puts to shame all those little cool ice cream shops in LA that think they're doing like ice cream donuts. It happened in
Yep.
San Ignacio first at the
Yep.
Fried Jack's spot. Hey, Amy, as you wander, I know you've been up and down the this hemisphere corridor, South America to the west coast of the U.S. to northern U.S. What are some places like you just dream about going if you're gonna just get out and wander? And you got any bucket list things you're thinking about?
Yeah, I've always wanted, I'm not really sure why, but I've always been drawn to Eastern Europe. I've always thought it would be really interesting to go and visit life there. I've been to kind of the tropical Central and South America countries and everything, but Eastern Europe has always, for some reason, just sounded so interesting to me to see life over there and how, for me, it's just so different from anything else I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it's that whole block of countries, and it's definitely it's popping again. I guess if it can be, there's so many amazing spots over there that aren't, aren't Paris and aren't London, and
Uh-huh.
all those normal kind of we have to go see, which are beautiful places. But to get in some of these other cultures again, that'd be
Yeah.
pretty. It was pretty fun.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by Europe. I love to go there as much as possible. It just takes so long to get there.
Yes.
That's why I'm like, I just, if I can go up and down, I go to Belize or Cancun or Jamaica or, some of these, give me the Caribbean, give me the hot, as I'm up here in northern Wisconsin still wishing I was in Belize right now. Give me the 100 and some degree weather over this 60s and shady. Ugh. Um, it's bad. Talk to me about some of the stuff you're doing down there. I know when you were in Guatemala, you did some amazing stuff with the inner city kids. You're trying to do some maybe not similar things in San Ignacio, but what are some things you've done? As again, you've gotten out as a small town Wisconsinite. You are going out trying to change the world. I would love for people to hear that in our podcast and video. If they can hear that anybody can do something. Some of the stuff you've done.
Well, here in Belize, our mission, we took over a small Foursquare church. They had been without a pastor for over a year, and so when we moved here, we were kind of starting from scratch. It was almost like a church plant. There was one family left, pretty much. So for the past 2 years, we've just been investing there, getting to know people, building the church back up, creating a family there again, and trying to establish just healthy Christians that know the Word of God and that are able to hear God's voice and find His calling over their lives. Our dream is that one day we would be able to raise up a local leader who could become the pastor one day, and to be able to take over. So kind of these past 2 years have really just been about that, about investing in the
Mhm.
church and building that up. It's really interesting too, because part of it so much is building community. And so we've done church family activities over the past few years, but for some reason, these past 2 months, when we've gotten on Zoom with our church, for 2.5 months, we were completely online because churches were shut down here too. You couldn't meet in person. So for 2 months, we were meeting 3 times a week online. And it's Harrison and I were just talking about how interesting it is that we feel like we're closer as a church family because of that,
Yeah.
because of not being able to meet together. And so it was a really interesting journey to spend that time on Zoom and online and just see how God could use that to bring us closer together as a church.
Um, you mentioned something I would love for you to talk a little bit about with this. Belize is completely closed down right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this maybe a year from when it got produced, we went through a crazy 2020 where basically the whole world's got shut down with travel and everything, but Belize is locked tight. You ain't no
Mm-hmm.
getting in, getting out for
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah.
So even if
It's
you're an
it's
American citizen, you ain't getting out.
Yeah,
So
it was really interesting here. It was so different than any other experience with COVID in other countries. And part of it's because it's such a small country; they could do this; it was possible. But when it all started, the end of March, we had a couple cases, and then like within 2 weeks, it was up to like 18 cases. And so the government, as soon as it started to expand, they just acted quickly and they shut down the international airport. They shut down the borders. You couldn't leave; nobody could come in. um, and it was crazy. Like you had to stay inside for, I think it was almost 2 months, that you could only go out to go to the store for medical emergencies and things like that. The police could stop you if you were walking down the road. They could stop you and say, where are you going, why are you going? And if
um,
it wasn't for an essential purpose, you could get ticketed. So the whole country completely shut down. But what was really interesting about that is then 2 weeks later there were no new cases, and so now we've gone a month and a half with no new cases except for some that have come in through the borders because they finally started letting just certain Belizeans that apply for it to return home, but they go straight to quarantine in a hotel. And so they've contained those few cases, but pretty much in Belize right now, we've been out without cases for a month and a half. So they finally, except for the borders, have allowed us a little bit more freedom. Like we can go visit people, we can go to different places within the country, but we were completely 100% on lockdown for almost 2 months.
Wow. Yeah, that's very different from our lockdown if we still where people are wandering all around.
Yeah.
Um, Time is as we kind of close up our time here. You live overseas, or I guess we can get there by land, so it's not overseas, but we would normally fly there or boat there. Both of your families are in a different country. How does somebody that's outside of how does a friend of yours actually be a friend of yours when you're not there? Like how do we help us as those that are back home in the States, as we get to talk with other people that are our friends that are living abroad? How do we become good friends? How do we be good friends with you? What do we need to do?
We miss those friendships so much. And the things that impact us and matter to us are just the moments. It can be simple little moments when people reach out to us when we're not seeking it, when we're not looking for it. And reach out to us and just communicate with us or care about us or just want to talk to us or just send us some silly little message or anything. Or there's even was a time when last year for Christmas, a church in Texas, they got together and they just filled this huge box with goodies and fun stuff that we can't get here and stuff that would be fun for my kids and shipped it down to us right before Christmas. And so it's just those little special things, just knowing that people are thinking of you and they make the effort to reach out to us and care about us.
Good. So hey, fellow wanderers, as you're out and about, don't forget those that are living out and about, and they're all over the place. Reach out to a friend that you maybe haven't been with for a while, or that is living overseas. You might see it as an eternal vacation, but they actually have to live and breathe and be in that area that is different from where they're from. And friendship and family still matters to them. So get out and be with them. Well, thank you, Amy Gutierrez from northern Wisconsin via LA, via Guatemala City, now in San Ignacio and Saint Elena, Saint Elena, Belize.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get. Oh man, it's so good to have you with us. And again, if you're wandering about, get out and see some things. And hopefully, this time was just again to get you to maybe potentially live overseas and get to know some other cultures a little more intimately. So thanks for jumping on today. Thanks for listening to the podcast, the video blog, and being with us today. And thank you to Amy for being with us this day. God bless and be with you guys as your family continues to impact